welcome back. Earlier we were talking about the mental health and how it is situated inside schools, which is very important because this is the foundation for any future. The mental health of students inside schools and also inside clubs and inside football courts and inside anywhere children and teenagers are located. It's very important, and the community awareness also is very much related to, it has a direct impact over mental health. The community awareness, when we talk about community awareness, we talk about the awareness of parents, we talk about the awareness of teachers, we talk about the awareness of coaches, the people who are instructing those students and children and giving them the directives to be able to and upbring them in every way. We're very delighted to be having with us Miss Ingy Ghannam. She's communication and psychology graduate, and she is also a volunteer in schools helping raising awareness about pressure issues in children, and she's also raising awareness about mental health in Egyptian society and everything. Good morning,
Good
Angie.
morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Let us first talk about the definition. Before air, I asked you about the definition of mental health.
Yes.
Does it mean that I'm crazy and I'm insane, or mental health is, it talks about my psychological and mental health in general?
It's definitely not anything about being crazy. This is one of the first things we learn in psychology, is that we never use the word crazy because it doesn't apply to any of these disorders. They're all...
It has nothing to do with insanity.
Exactly. It's all medical. It's just like having any other illness that's physical, except it's mental. And this is the most important thing to touch on, is that it doesn't make someone crazy because it's something that everyone experiences. Everybody struggles with their mental health. It's normal.
When we talk about the mental health of students inside schools, that is mainly or somehow focusing over their difficulties. Let us just give them the word difficulties inside of mental health, because this is a grave word. Mental health is, I mean, it's it has a lot of definitions. That's why you can simplify it into difficulties. Children with difficulties, like learning difficulties, speaking difficulties, character difficulties, I mean, behavior difficulties, all types of difficulties. If you like to also talk to us about these types of difficulties first, before we talk about how to treat them.
Well, it ranges from a lot of things in children. It could be something like ADHD or ADD, which is a difficulty in keeping focus. It's
attention deficit disorder.
Yes. So the children are typically very hyperactive. They can't focus on one task at a time, and they require a different learning strategy to actually be able to succeed like other students would. There are also speech difficulties like speech delays. There's usually, sometimes in many children, behavioral issues, which can be caused either by stress from their family life at home or from peers in school. So these are all things that we must be aware of and understand, so that we can show these children that we feel what they're going through, we understand what they're going through, and to figure out with them and their families how we can help them succeed just as much as other students who may not have that difficulty.
Can we just also include dyslexia, for example, with this group of children, and also other types of difficulties like stuttering, for example?
Yes, these definitely would count. They're not inherently mental health issues. However, they can cause mental health issues, because students who have dyslexia or have a stutter will very often be bullied in school by other children. And this feeling of being an outcast or being bullied by your peers definitely takes a very big toll on people's perception of themselves and how they view themselves, and in turn their mental health.
What about partial autism? Not the total autism, but partial,
Yes.
where people can communicate.
It's definitely still, there's a very big stigma around it. People look at people, even with autism in general, people look at them as if they don't have the same capabilities as someone without autism, but many studies have shown that that's not true. A lot of people with autism have many incredible abilities, heightened senses, heightened abilities that we might not have. And so it's very important to understand what strengths and weaknesses everyone carries and to play into that, to encourage them to do the things that they love and that they're good at.
Before we delve into details, let us specify those people. I mean, those kids are normal kids, and they're supposed to be integrated with all the students.
Yes, of course.
Except for the total autism, but partial autism, dyslexia, stuttering, ADHD. As we all know that most of the words genius people and we also have the Asperger.
Yes.
Most of the people, prominent characters in society, very successful characters and businessmen and entrepreneurs, they used to suffer from Asperger, partial autism and ADHD and all those types of difficulties. I mean, that's very normal.
Exactly. I personally believe that any child has the same worth as the other. I don't see any difference between a child with autism or a child that doesn't have autism.
It's not a grave difficulty.
Yes, exactly. It's
and they have good talents and they are very intelligent.
Exactly, and they should be treated equally. They should be treated the same. There's obviously, in terms of learning, we might have to alter things so that we can make it easier for them, for them to learn and to understand the same way that other children do. But there's no inherent difference. They're both children. They both have the same worth. And so it's important that we instill that.
And they have talents.
Yes,
and
exactly.
They have capabilities. So let us first specify or focus over the problem. The problem is not with the student. The problem is with the people who upbring the student and teach them and direct them in their lives, who is the parent and also the teacher.
Yes.
So the instructions and the campaigns and the awareness should be directed towards teachers.
Yes, there definitely should be. I mean, I think it's very important to educate children on these topics as well. But one of the first things we learn is that people lead by example. So
exactly.
As children, we tend to mimic what our parents do or what our teachers do. The adults that we spend most of our time with, we do what they do, what they teach us. And so it is very important, especially with people from older generations who may have different beliefs or different ideas that are almost set in stone for them. It's very important that we challenge their beliefs and their ideas, and we show them the evidence that these things are not factual, these things are not true. And so educating children
these things are not true.
Exactly. Educating children is very important, but educating their families, their parents, their teachers is just as important and just as vital.
So talk to us, explain to us what exact campaigns and what exact type of education or sessions do you give to students in classes and also teachers, because this is very important, like regulations, the measures through which they could be, you teach them, you train them to think or to attain their way of, as a way of thinking.
So usually when I volunteer in schools or in orphanages, what we tend to do is we have the students for 1 day a week and we spend some time with them on that day. Usually that day they don't have school. And so we will create activities for them that are enjoyable, that they will love and have fun doing. And we instill these lessons in them. So we teach them, for example, that it's okay to speak about your feelings. It's not shameful. So if you're feeling hurt, if you're feeling upset about something, you should speak to someone rather than bottle it up, because that will hurt you. Or teaching them about bullying, which is one of the biggest things that we try to cover, because we know how much of a prevalent issue it has become in many schools. And so what we try to teach them is how to deal with their feelings, because a lot of students that bully other kids are usually dealing with their own struggles, and so they take it out on someone else. So we teach them how to deal with these feelings.
They have deficiencies.
Yes.
They bring it on other people.
Exactly. So when you're struggling with a certain
emotion. And this
emotion,
happens with grown-ups also.
Yes, of course. And when you're struggling with a certain feeling and you bottle it up, it's very easy for you to take it out on someone else. So we teach these children how to actually navigate these feelings and these emotions and make sense of them, and then how to deal with the people around them and treat them respectfully. So these are all things that we try to instill in them. And additionally, as a graduation project, we've also created a campaign called Istargil, which is mainly on Instagram. We kind of use the name as irony, but essentially what...
Be a man.
Yes. Essentially, the point of our campaign was to break down this idea that men can't speak about their feelings.
Whose idea is the, the name?
We came up with it as a group, but it was
group
definitely...
of girls?
We were 4 girls and 1 guy.
Okay.
So essentially the idea was just to kind of break down this idea that men can't speak about their feelings, or if you talk about your mental health or your feelings, that means you're not a man. So we constantly created posts talking about how disparaging the evidence is between men and women in mental health. I mean, the majority of suicides that happen in Egypt are committed by men, and these are mostly due to depression, financial struggles, and not having an outlet for these things. So what we aimed to do was really to raise awareness for younger men and also for older generations to start to kind of shift the way that they think about this.
Going back to the foundation of society, which are kids and mainly teenagers and children and all that, how the problems, mental health differ in a way. The situation of mental health of kids in school, like in international school, differs from that on local schools, for example, national schools, and those from, you talked about orphanages.
Yes.
What type of problems do you find in orphanages?
Typically in orphanages, the teachers or the supervisors there are not really equipped to deal with children who have suffered
They're
a
supposed to be
traumatic
more
experience.
equipped than other normal.
Exactly, because these children typically either their parents have passed or their parents have given them up for adoption. And we learn in psychology that an experience like that, losing your parents, whether forever or for a period of time, is very traumatic. It's something that will affect that child for many years going on. And so these people need to be more equipped to deal with this kind of trauma. And so a lot of times this trauma translates into behavioral issues or outbursts or a lack of interest in education. And so the issue is that most of these teachers, when they see these behavioral issues or this lack of interest in education, they tend to use violence or force against the students to motivate them to continue learning. But what they're not understanding is that just pushes them further back. It doesn't help them at all. It only makes them regress. And what they need to learn to do is to be able to understand where this child is struggling emotionally, mentally, and how to deal with the trauma that they've experienced to get past that and help them become the person they want to be.
Motivate them, motivate. But at the same time, how do you try to help them integrate into society, cope with society, behave the best way? What type of sessions, what type of help and assistance do you give to those orphans in order to give them, number one, awareness on how to behave as a normal being instead of all the difficulties they're suffering from and the bad luck?
So there are a few things that we like to do. First of all, one of the biggest issues that we face in this setting is that the children are very reluctant to trust us. Because obviously having that sort of experience, it's very difficult for them to trust random people.
Is this a trait with 3 children and orphans?
Yes, because they definitely have an issue with being abandoned, and abandonment issues can cause trust issues. Being abandoned obviously makes it a lot harder for someone to trust someone else because you constantly think that this person will leave you too. Why should they stay with me? So one of the things we try to do is we don't try to force the children to open up to us or be close to us right away. We understand that this will take time, but what we like to do is to be consistent. So we come every week, we go spend time with them every week, and this proves to them, because once we tell them that they can trust us, we have to prove it so that they actually believe us. And so when we go spend time with them, when we give them attention, when we give them that care that they need, then they begin to understand that we are trying to help them, that we're there for them, that we care about them. And so then they begin to trust us, which makes helping them and teaching them a lot easier. And when we establish that trust, it's also very important that we begin to enforce good behavior. So when they do something that's good, when they do something that's good behavior, we we reward them, we give them something good. And if they do something that we don't like or something that's not nice, we don't use force or violence. We try to explain to them what's wrong about what they've done. So helping them understand their actions and the consequences that they have. And then throughout time, they will begin to get used to it and they will function with the right moral scale. They'll understand what's right and what's wrong, and they'll be able to go about it.
You know, you're doing a very important job in society. One big important job, because you are laying a foundation for a future. You are not just trying to find solutions for the difficulties or treat kids in a different way with difficulties, but you are also giving sessions for awareness for society, building the Egyptian character according to the directives of President Abdel Fattah Sisi. He is very much keen on building the Egyptian character. And when we talk about building the Egyptian character, we talk about building awareness, building a total new culture, or a whole, retrieving the old Egyptian, good old-fashioned Egyptian culture of respecting the other, respecting differences, not to be racist, respecting women and elderly, and stretching out your hands to people with less abilities and less privilege. I mean, this is a culture. So it's not medicine, and it's not science, and it's not psychology. It is also a culture. It's a national mission.
Yes, of course. And these are things that I believe have to be integrated into education. Not only should we teach children about math and science and arts, but we should also teach them how to function in society, how to be a good person, because these are skills that will help them carry out their entire lives, whether in relationships, in work, in school. It doesn't matter. These are things that will always be valuable, that will always be useful. And so there has to be an emphasis.
And it will build society, it will build nations.
So there has to be emphasis on incorporating that into their education. Because the earlier that we begin to instill these values in our children, the more that they will actually become what we would love to see them be. You know, they'll become good people. They'll become people that care about each other, that care about people that are less fortunate than them. And they'll be able to work in unison with each other, understand their strengths and their weaknesses, and be able to complete each other rather than constantly competing or wanting to be better.
Exactly. And how far have you been helping or trying to deliver the message, the right message of being different doesn't mean that you have a less ability, but you are different because you're good and talented at other fronts and points.
Yes.
I mean, have you, like, for example, you've raised the campaign Istargil, for example. Did you raise other campaigns for people with a little bit, who are a little bit different, with special difficulties, to try to explain to other students that those kids are talented and qualified?
Yes.
And succeeded in that?
Yeah, so in terms of campaigns, we only, our group only has Istargil for now. But in general, what I have done is throughout university, whenever I go to these volunteering experiences, I try to always instill that value in the children that I see. So so for example, if I see someone bullying someone else or making fun of someone else, I'll try to explain to them why it's not okay and why they shouldn't do that. And then also explain to them that everyone has inherent value. Nobody is less valuable than someone else. We're all human beings, and so we're all equal, we're all valuable. And so helping them understand that concept also helps them be more accepting of each other. So that's one of the things that we really try to constantly instill in students. And even in my own family, with the children in my family, I always try to continuously instill that idea that, you know, they're all the same, everyone is the same. You're not better than anyone, and you're not worse than anyone.
Because why I'm asking you so, because when you do so, you also, not just to try to explain to them the wrong behavior they're following or they're doing, but at the same time, you are helping them explore themselves and point out to the, the talents inside them and raise it out, because when you encourage them, you bring it out, and they spend effort and they become better, much better.
Yes, of course. I mean, for a child, understanding themselves and coming into their own personality, having their own sense of self is key for the rest of their lives. So it's very important from them, like from the beginning stage of them being aware of themselves, that we help them become who they want to be and help them, we don't want to kind of limit any part of their personality or pick and choose what we like about them. We want them to be themselves, and we want them to be confident about themselves. And so these are definitely things that we have to learn to instill in our children and in children around us, that they can always be who they are and not be ashamed of it. And that they have to learn that, we will be accepting of them as long as they're accepting of us, of course.
So what other sessions or what other jobs or activities do you do with parents?
So with
Because
parents,
this is also important.
yes, that's something that we definitely want to start doing, because we haven't really had the chance to speak with parents as of yet in terms of these volunteer experiences. But in terms of our campaign on Instagram, this is something that we try to kind of raise awareness about, because we know that everybody these days uses Instagram. And so having that kind of information being constantly spread definitely helps shift the way that parents think about mental health in general, and helping their children be emotionally content and stable. So we
Do you
try
have a page or something?
Yes, the page on Instagram that's called Istargal. These are things that we always kind of post
Focusing
about.
on men.
So we try to post about these things because we know that with older generations, these are ideas that they were brought up with, and so they're used to, and they were never challenged. And if we're never challenged in our beliefs, we can never change them. So our goal was to just put out the information that we know is factual, is real, and is helpful, and hope that it reaches as many people as possible. And if it even helps one person, I mean, there were people that would send us messages on like direct message that would tell us that they felt okay speaking to us about their mental health because they knew that we wouldn't judge them. But people in their real lives, they know that they can't speak to them because they felt judged. But as soon as even like complete strangers show you that you can trust me, I won't judge you, you will be so much more likely to open up and let out all that's bottled up inside you.
In spite of the fact that you're doing a very, very important job and something that you should be respected, I mean, it deserves a lot of respect. But at the same time, it's very difficult because you have grown-ups. We are surrounded by a community that is very much judgmental, and it judge you the moment you say good morning to them or say hello. They judge you before you speak. And before they see anything from you, which makes your job much more difficult. Those kids, I mean, according to the living standards of each community, they are brought up with a certain cultural background, and so there are some communities that were born judgmental. And that's why that would make your job and mission much more difficult. And that's why I was asking you about the parents, and the reason I asked you about parents and about even the community, people in the street. So how do you deal with community at large?
I mean, I think the most important thing is to kind of understand that these people react that way because that's all that they know. So I used to take it very personally before, because I've personally struggled with my mental health for many, many years. And I was even worried and scared to tell people in my life that I went to see a psychiatrist or that I was seeking help for my mental health. Even though it was one of the best decisions I've made in my life, it helped me so much in my quality of life, in my relationships, in my university career, in my work, everything. But I felt like I would be judged, and I always used to think that these people are judging me because they hate me, they think I'm odd, they think I'm crazy. But in reality, they only have these beliefs because that's all that they know, that's all that they were brought up with. And so it's very important to understand that there's sort of a gap, and to be able to bridge that gap and not take it personally, but continue to try to explain to them why we do what we do, why we're trying to change this. And what I found is most people actually are very receptive to it once they learn about how it affects their children.
That is also good news. Ingy, I don't want to end this interview because it's very interesting. However, we should be doing this. We have to do our job. Ingy Ghannam would like to thank you so much. Communication and psychology graduate. I'm expecting you to I mean, wishing you the best of luck on your mission and expecting you to do something massive in society.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Best of luck to you. And we're going to go to a short break, and we'll come to continue the breakfast show, so stay with us.